Hello and welcome back to the Novice Lumberjack, where I am here with the the fourth place winner of the horizontal hustle, the Husqvarna 51 that was built by Corp. All right, so first off, let me read what he did here. He calls it a budget built 55, traded for a mostly complete 55. Used a $7 028 piston, 262 XP carburetor, the HDA 87 carb. And so this means you would be able to use a carb that was for the 254 XP, the 257, the 261, and the 262 XP. They all use the same carb, but they're hard to find. They're extremely hard to find. So it might be one of those things where you'd be better off getting the Chinese carb. It's got a Poland choke. Now he didn't tell me which choke it, from what model. So Corey in the comments, buddy, put what model Poland the choke is from. But it's not exactly the same as the choke on I've got the green version of the 295. What do they call that even? 2650, I think. But yeah, Corey put it in there what the choke actually came off of, the exact model. I don't know. It looks like the choke that would be used on one of the more modern ones where it has the kill switch right above it, you know? But anyways, moving on. Says he went through 4 different cylinders trying different port numbers. This one, after machine work, is just basic. So I take that to mean that he probably cut the squish, cut the base. Well, if he used the 028 cylinder, he probably didn't cut the base. He probably just cut the squish. So there's the machine work, is my guess. But he probably doesn't have fingers or anything like that. So just basic stuff. The exhaust is at 100. The transfers are at 124 and the intake is at 75. He says he did not lower the intake at all. He only shaped and widened it. Widened and raised the exhaust. Left the transfers alone, top and bottom. He didn't do anything to the transfers. Seems to run best with more case pressure. Timing advanced a lot, about 15 degrees at least. So there you go. So now let's break it apart real quick and just have a little look-see at this carburetor setup. Yeah, I've been saying that I was going to tear this thing apart just to have a look in there. Basically, I just want to see, what it looks like. How if he used the factory intake setup and things of that nature. Probably going to be best if it's a little difficult to get that top cover off. But yeah, this thing ran fantastic. Fired right up, idled perfect, tuned up just right. And so naturally I was very impressed by it. Especially considering how it really was capable of cutting. I mean, my goodness, it cut. Now, a lot of you guys have been asking me to put some other saw in the wood. Don't worry, I've already done that. I did that the day after, right? And but I'm going to probably go ahead and put a couple other saws in the wood too, just to have a comparison video of how well these saws run. And I will say that they, like this one right here, with a 3/8 chain on it, it would probably, a 262 XP is about the power of what this thing's putting out with the 260, or the cut speed, I should say. Because the 325 chain going on the 268 XP is not impossible to do, but you would have to change to a big 9-pin 325 sprocket. See what I'm saying? So you can't really compare. It's not an apples to apples setup. But yeah, as far as cut speed times, this thing would probably compare to a stock 262 XP. All right, so let's look at this carb setup. It's really basic. He has the factory intake setup on there. This is the choke that we're talking about, that Poland choke. He had to notch the top cover. This is, I guess this is a factory. He had to cut this right here. I believe that's the way it went. But other than that, looks like the choke lever just goes right on there. No issues whatsoever. Nothing weird on this side, you know. So yeah, it just goes right on there. Looks like possibly the carb is on there upside down. No, it's not. That's the way they are with the 262. That's the right orientation and everything. He said that he used the factory 55 throttle linkage. He just bent it a little bit, you know, got it to work. It works slick as factory. I mean, there's nothing weird going on with that at all. Bada bing, bada boom. You know, the transfers being factory, you know, he said he didn't do anything with them at all. They're at 124, right? Yeah. So let me explain that just a little bit, because you know that I kind of like to run high transfers. It depends on the saw. It totally depends on the saw and what I'm doing with that saw and everything. And I don't want it to sound like I'm like the master at this. I am not even close. But I've done a lot at this point, and I've learned a bit of knowledge. And the reason these things, he was saying, seem to run better with the lower transfers, so that you have more crankcase compression. Dyno Joe's build also had pretty low transfers as well. I think he was running 120 on his transfers. And for a race saw, you know, like for example, my Red Max, I think the transfers are at 112 or 113 on that. And you're like, that's a huge difference. 124 to 113. That's a big difference. And a lot of people still are stuck on the blowdown thing. I say stuck because I've learned to see it a different way that works for me. If you like talking about blowdown and stuff, you go for it. I just feel like blowdown is just a meaningless number. But there's an amount of knowledge. Everything has to be taken with a grain of salt. It's a balance. It's a ballet. A two-stroke is a ballet. You can't force anything. Well, anyways, with these transfers being completely open as they are, and they're big. They're not just open ports. They're big open ports for this little saw, that little piston that's moving up and down. Even the big piston on this is only 46 millimeter, and it's only got 32 millimeters of stroke. So there's not a lot of volume coming in. And then all of a sudden it's got these great big transfers to feed up through. And well, with that going on, you're filling up the crankcase with your air and fuel mixture. But then as that piston comes back down, if you start to move it quickly, like I did with my 55, well, you don't have enough pressure in there in order to really send those transfers, the charge up and into the top of the cylinder. And so by having lower upper transfers, you're increasing your crankcase pressure, which means you're driving that fuel and air up there with more pressure, and therefore it can push out the exhaust a lot better. And it just works better, obviously. You know, he built an awesome saw, freaking basic. Timing advance, again, 15 degrees plus on this thing. You know, wow. And nice big honking muffler mod there. So I'm learning stuff all the time, just like many of you guys, probably most or all of you guys are learning stuff. if you're not learning, then you know what's the point. That's my takeaway with it. He does have a 7-pin sprocket on there. I think everyone ran a 7-pin sprocket. An 8-pin just kill you. You know, you can't stay up there in the high RPMs if you put an 8-pin on it. But two things that I have learned, I've learned a lot, but two things that I'm talking about right here that I have learned is just get the damn exhaust out. If you're building a saw for speed, get that exhaust out as fast as you can. I know that whenever I was learning this and doing all this stuff, I was saying various different things. You got to have that back pressure and stuff. Well, I want to say a resounding no, you don't. No, you do not have to have that back pressure and stuff. Now, if you want to dial it in and run perfect and the best and everything, there are changes. Dyno Joe just recently dynoed his 55 build, and it ran better with the factory exhaust opened up than it did with a straight pipe. So there are differences, and I won't deny that, right? But the idea that the pressure has to come back out and then go back in, I've been to enough races at this point to where I see it. The top performers are just getting that exhaust out, you know? And yeah, there's little bits and differences and stuff, especially whenever you come with a firewood saw. If this had no muffler whatsoever, it probably would not run as good. It probably wouldn't. I'll go ahead and say that. So it's a little contradictory what I'm saying. But the idea that you need to have this perfect size hole so that you can have back pressure and stuff, it's just not what people, including myself, have claimed that it is. The most important factor is get the exhaust out as quickly as possible. And then from there, fine tune it as much as you're willing to spend time on it, right? But the other thing that I have learned, and probably the number one reason why my 55, this is not the one for the race, the one that I work from time to time, my build, I've done several different build videos of it, trying to get that thing up into the higher RPMs. And I never managed to do it. The best I got was, it pretty consistently running about 10,500 RPMs in the cut, right? Which is a good little work saw. There is nothing wrong with that. It is my 55 that I use and work runs really well, and I like it. However, now knowing what I know, I'll probably look to do something like this on my 55 just to see how much of a difference that bigger carburetor will make, because it's not about fuel. Everybody makes the mistake of thinking that you need a bigger carburetor because you need more fuel. No, you don't. Almost every carburetor on every chainsaw out there, you can richen it up to the point that it's blubbering rich. And it'll die on you. Okay? Almost every carb that there is on a frickin' chainsaw, you can give it too much fuel. It's not about fuel. It's about air. And that little tiny carburetor that comes on the 50, 51, 55s is not big enough to supply the air that it needs at the higher RPMs, right? So just basic numbers here, very basic numbers. Let's say at 10,000 RPMs, I need 10 CFM of air in order to fully fill my crankcase and stuff and get this thing to run and sing, right? That's great. At 11,000 RPMs, I need 11 cubic feet per minute of air, right? 11 CFM, right? If you've still got the same carburetor, that carburetor can only flow 10. And so you cannot get to the 11,000 RPM unless you get a bigger carburetor on there. And so That's the two big things that I have learned when building these race carbs or race saws. Uh, Firewood race. I'm not building real race saws. That is above me for right now, and hopefully someday I'll get up there. But without a carburetor to support your air volume needs, your saw literally cannot climb into the higher RPM ranges. Now, there are other factors that can limit it as well, but what I'm talking about specifically is this right here, and the big thing that holds back myself and most people, I think. They build a saw, they spend all this time freaking cutting on it and porting it and cut the squish and all this stuff and build a kick-ass exhaust, and it's still slow. Why? Well, if your carburetor cannot support all those modifications that you just did, you're fucked. So this right here is a really excellent upgrade. It's really clean and tidy. And yeah, I will probably look to do that right there to my chainsaw setup, my personal 55. Another thing to talk about is the carburetor that TW used. TW used a Chinese clone saw carburetor that you can buy for the 6200 or the 62cc Chinese clone saws, the Zenoa clones. That thing seemed to work really well also. However, the choke was over here on this side, and he had to set up this goofy rod to go back and forth to open the choke up and shut it off and everything. So I would, for a saw that I am looking to actually utilize and work, I would much prefer something along these lines right here. And it even has, the high idle setting. So it's on. See? So that's nice. That's a really nice setup right there. Really nice little saw. And I have owned a 262 XP. Now mine was completely stock and stuff, but I can say pretty much without question, this thing would outperform a stock 262 XP. And that's great. They're pretty much the exact same size. And you've got, what do you got? Like 8 cc's less with this. And it's performing up there. Nice saw. Good job, Corey. All right. Now, we'll break into probably at least one more saw. And then there will also be a video about the winners who won the giveaways and stuff like that. But for now, that's it. Again, good job on Corey. Oh, what does he get for this? Well, I contacted him. I was like, is there anything you need and stuff? And back and forth, we're talking and everything. And what we actually came up with, y'all are going to laugh at this probably. I hope so. Or you'll think that I'm a greedy bastard and I'm just an asshole. I'm going to give him an Echo 490 as well. And I'm going to send him my Johnson Red 670. And you go, what? You're giving him your Johnson Red 670? No, I'm not. He's going to port it for me. So I am really excited about this. This is something that I came up with here pretty recently. Actually, I came up with it with Ethan Trainer, right? I really, Ethan ported my Steel 400, and I was this close to sending him my Johnson Red 670. Because what I have kind of latched onto now is this idea that having certain saws that I pretty much know I'm not going to get rid of that saw, at least not for a very long time. And, well, instead of me porting those saws, it would be much better if I got somebody else in the community to build it. That way I can be like, hey, this is my Ethan Trainer saw. Ethan just got the bum deal because he got that damn MS400 that has problems. I'll get it worked out. eventually. And I'm not showing that saw ever again until I get the bugs worked out of it, because I didn't realize it while I was making it. I thought it was going to run perfect, and it just never did. And I made the videos, and so I put them up. But I probably should have never done that, because it kind of gives Ethan a black eye. And I don't like doing that. I hate that. That's really bad. So that saw will not get shown on the channel ever again unless it's running tip-top perfect. And so with Corp here, I will be able to go, yeah, I've got a Corp saw. It's my John Thread 670. Because the 670 is a saw that I consider very worthy of putting on a shelf. I mean, using every now and then, but putting it on a shelf to display. That's my 670 Champ. And it's going to be built by Corp. So that's a cool thing, Like I've got, I've got Bobby Boucher, it's built by Pat. I've got the Echo 4910, which is going to switch over, but I'm not gonna do any port work or anything to that saw. Charlie already did that. I got my Charlie Briscoe built 4910. I've also got a Charlie Briscoe built 4310 Echo. I have the Jeff Seacombe built Ike Turner, the 064, but there's some, the 064, I've got a lot of internal just heartbreak about that saw, because it doesn't fall into any of my categories of need. And so I am looking at that saw and going, it is doomed to never run again. And because I can't race it, even if I could race it, it's a more, it's a work saw. It's not, and so it loses. It runs absolutely stunningly fantastic, but I am never going to use that thing for its intended use. And there's so few of them out there, I can't help but go, maybe I should sell that to somebody that would actually get use out of it. I've talked with Jeff about it a little bit. I don't know what to do with the 064. I don't know if I should just keep it and put it on a shelf because it's awesome. And I just don't know. But anyways, Corey's going to build my 670. I'm happy about that. That is a saw. And you know me, I don't even like steel. So it's like, yeah, it's an awesome saw, but am I going to appreciate it the way that I would appreciate a 670 Champ? No, I'm not. I'm just not. And if I ever need a big saw to work, I have my 592. So I have all this shit in my head. Probably nothing will ever happen, and I'll just keep the 064 because it's a radical saw. It's fantastic. We all have our little things. Like some people like to spread the butter on their toast from left to right, and some people do it from right to left. Some people put a sock, then a boot. Some people put 2 socks and then 2 boots. Remember that? That was an episode of, what was that show called? You had the grumpy old asshole. All in the Family? Was that the name of it? Somebody will put it, will tell me what it is. Anyways, there was an episode where his son-in-law put on 1 sock, then 1 boot. Archie Bunker was the name of the grumpy old guy. And Archie was like, "What are you doing?" He's like, I'm putting on my boots. He's like, "You're putting them on wrong." Anyways, that was a funny episode. It's a funny show. Wouldn't work in today's climate, would it? Woo!